Good morning, Sarah Hefla.
Good morning, Nancy Ramelman. How's New York?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back from Los Angeles. That was a whirlwind of a trip. 5 stories in 6 days. Working on the last one now. It was LA was interesting. Not as people I think expected, and not I'm not going to scoop myself, but not I don't think as the Trump administration expected. So hang tight for that for the next piece. But I'm really glad I went. Thank you to Reason Magazine for always letting me drop into these situations, and glad to be back in New York.
I went to the No Kings rally protest in Dallas. Thousands of people. I recognized them from the women's rights protest and the George Floyd protest that I'd also been to at City Hall. We're like, hey, the band's back together again. What's going on? I haven't seen you since the other thing.
Yeah.
But millions of people protested across the country. A large number of them were quite old. I'm just going to say that.
Yep.
I'm just going to
Yep.
say that. I'm going to say that.
Yep.
There was it skewed older. And I'm old. I'm 50 years old. So if I think people are old.
Yeah. It's, I mean, who has time to go out and protest, right?
Who watches MSNBC?
Yeah, they're boomers and they're out there and they're not running after little kids or whatever, nursing hangovers. You know, they're out there and they want it. They're also like come from like that sort of like, we did it in the 60s. We're still here. So, okay, good for them. I mean, I saw the same thing. I saw, though, of course, there's always the difference in the protests. There's the daytime crew, then there's the nighttime crew. So
Sure.
I saw both in LA, but definitely the daytime crew was definitely older Gen X, boomers, etc. So
we have a guest.
We do.
Special guest. So special.
I don't know what generation she is. I don't really have any idea. I don't even really know what the generations are, but she's generation.
Generation
K.
K.
Yeah.
Generation K. I have a short introduction I would like to read.
Okay. Do it.
Katie Herzog is one half of the team behind Blocked and Reported, a must-listen culture podcast for me, and one of the funniest breaks in my week. Katie is also a journalist who wrote a book about quitting drinking. It's called Drink Your Way Sober, the science-based method to break free from alcohol. It's not out until September, but you can pre-order it now. And we'll talk about that book today. Katie might live in Seattle and she might live in North Carolina, but I know that she has a wife and a dog named Moose. Katie Herzog, welcome to Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em.
Thank you guys for having me. I've been eagerly anticipating my introduction, Sarah.
I know. It has a longer part that I'll get to later, but I didn't want to like dump it all in the opening.
Can I do one correction to the
oh yeah, please.
Introduction? I'm not one half of Blocked and Reported. Oh. I'm 2/3.
That's right. 70%. 70%.
Yeah. I was gonna say, how do you describe your rapport with your co-host Jesse Singal of Blocked and Reported?
Abusive?
I have theories.
Do you think abusive is the correct term?
Meaning from you to him.
Yes, this is a feminist podcast. I'm doing my part to fight the patriarchy. One specific patriarch in particular.
Through his 6 billion body.
Yeah. Oh, he's so big.
It's strange. So no one expects a guy like Jesse Singal to be tall, and not just tall, like hefty too. It's very strange.
We went to Israel together and he was always so hungry. Yeah. And I was constantly like pushing my portions of food toward him because he can't get enough calories for this gigantic overgrown puppy man body. Yeah.
And half the calories end up on his shirt. A t-shirt. Always a t-shirt.
I've never met Jesse. I want to meet him. People when they meet me, they always say like, "You're so short," because I seem taller.
Yeah, you seem taller than Jesse.
And Jesse does not seem tall to me. So I know when I meet Jesse, it's just going to be like, "How's the weather up there?"
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably two of me stacked on. I almost said snacked on top of each other.
True. Yeah.
He would snack you.
So I love your rapport with Jesse. And I think there's so many great things about Blocked and Reported, but to me, the really special secret sauce is the two of you together, and the comedy and the timing and the whatever it is. I have come to think of it as funny older sister and hapless younger brother.
I think that's apt. We're almost exactly the same age.
Oh,
There's like 3 months between us. Although he was a year behind me in school because he was held back, which I think probably
was he
tells
really?
you a lot. He did, yeah. He either started late or he did kindergarten twice. It was one of those situations.
Oh my
Which,
gosh.
after listening to the show for a while, you probably understand why.
Jesse
Um,
is brilliant, and Katie is
eh,
unbelievably good at knocking him down to size.
yeah.
And
Well, he's huge. It's not that hard to do.
yeah, it's, it's really, and he is so good natured. It's almost like, it's not even like he minds you. It's almost like you're right sizing him by putting him down so much. He's like, you're right, you're definitely right.
I have in my fantasies about I was telling you guys before we started recording, I have these elaborate fantasies about murdering Jesse at times. And my fantasies, you thought that was just for the pre-broadcast. This is for the real thing. So,
Great.
and in my fantasies, I like get on BlueSky and I dox him. I drop his address, maybe his social security number, which I do have, into BlueSky, and then somebody, steals his information, takes his information, and goes and murders him. I don't want it to be painful or anything,
No,
but I
no,
do.
it's
Yeah,
just so fascinating when love curdles like
yeah.
this.
So,
It really, it's just nothing. There's nothing like two people that were close once
yeah.
turning on each
Well,
other.
I don't know if we were ever close. This has always been a business relationship. But anyway, so in my fantasies, I do think like, who would I replace Jesse with?
Oh,
And
right.
obviously, like I'd want it to be probably a woman.
Helen Lewis.
Well, Helen, but the problem, Helen is great. Helen is fantastic. She's actually too good for the show, too good for us.
And
But
just in case people don't know, if they're not listeners to Blocked and Reported, first of all, you should be. It's hilarious and amazing. Second of all, Helen Lewis, who's been on our podcast before, the Atlantic journalist who's from Britain, makes these at least yearly appearances on Blocked and
Mhm.
Reported that are just epic.
Yeah, Helen really should be hosting the show. We both prefer her to each other. But I have thought, would I want if Jesse tragically disappeared because I had him murdered,
Sure.
who would I want to replace him with? Would I want it to be a woman? Would I want it to be a man? And the problem with having almost anyone else, but in particular a woman, is that I'm not sure I could be mean to a
Right.
woman the way that I'm mean to Jesse. And there is this I've always had good male friends. And there is this way that I think men relate to each other
Yes.
that is much meaner than women do. Maybe
It's
Dykes.
a kind of bonding that they have.
Yes, yes,
And it
yes,
starts when they're younger. And so I had an
yes.
older brother. So when he would do it to me, I was like, and he was like, God, you are no fun to play with because
Can't take it.
I play with you and you cry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm tender, I'm a
Right,
girl.
right. It's like the racism in the kitchen, if you've ever worked in a kitchen,
Oh,
there's like kitchens are incredibly racist, but from my experience in sort of a good-hearted way, and
mhm.
it is bonding, and it is sort of a male typical pattern, and it's something that I really enjoy. I think I'm frankly pretty good at it.
You are.
And I just don't know if I could replicate that with a woman. I think
No,
I'd be too nice. It wouldn't
I
work.
think you've
People would
gotten
find it
off
creepy.
easy with Jesse. I think it's a huge advantage that you're not factoring in to the
Yeah.
irritation that he
Yeah.
makes you have.
Yeah, I don't mean this, but I should say he's also a very good person.
Okay.
Crickets. I also I think one thing you guys also have done is that you both receive, and since I've known you, Katie, you've received so much hate that you guys have built up this carapace together,
Mhm.
and then are
Mhm.
kind of able almost always to be funny about it.
Mhm. The
You know,
alligator
so
skin. Yeah, the living in the Northwest, alligator skin.
I will say, I went on the other day. I was looking at something, and don't ask me why, but something about it was like a trans Wikipedia journal entry for me, like the
Oh.
longest thing I've ever seen. And the first thing it made sure to say was like, and she's been on blocked and reported,
Yeah.
because
Was this
that, of course, was, the most indicting thing.
I know exactly what there's this, I think the polite way of putting it is psychotrans bitch named Andrea James, who has a repository of basically like a hate collection. And at some point she was commissioning like boardwalk caricatures of people she didn't like. So she has this website, and she would commission this like art that would make Jesse look more Jewish and make me look more like a man, ironically.
Oh.
And she had like intimate details of family life, of people's personal lives. And I don't know why she does this. Well, I do know why, because she's a psychotrans bitch. And she's also one of the main characters in Alice Drager's fantastic book, Galileo's Middle Finger. So not just sort of a random character. This is someone who's a well-known, or was a well-known trans activist. I think trans activism has sort of passed her by, and I suspect that the less psycho members of that community want nothing to do with this person. But yeah, she has this website. It was actually featured on a Kickstarter, like Kickstarters to watch. She raised like tens of thousands of dollars to make this stupid website that is just about her internet.
Oh, good.
And the crazy thing is that she actually, you'll probably get a page too just for talking to me, Sarah. And the crazy thing about it is we had someone look into this. This for a while was the first thing that would come up when you would Google me, and this is probably true it might still be true for me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And she had this system where all of these, it's like a link farm. I don't understand technology, but basically, like, she had a friend who worked at University of Michigan, and we know who this person was. She died. I won't mention her name. And this other trans activist, and like thousands of links were coming from the University of Michigan, which has a .edu address, back to this shitty website, which was legitimizing it and forcing it like higher in Google rankings.
Yep.
Very devious. And Alice Drager. So I wrote as many of your listeners probably know, I sort of got into this fight because I wrote a piece on detransitioners in 2017. It's sort of my origin story. And Alice Drager, I talked to Alice Drager when I was working on that piece. And Alice said, she was like warning me what was going to come. And she said, you're going to get a lot of shit for this. And a lot of people who attack you, they're going to be trans women, and they're going to be really good at technology. And at the time I was like, that is so reductive. Like, that is offensive. How could you say that? And it was so true.
So true.
Yeah.
I'm imagining my mom listening to this and thinking to herself, why does everyone hate this lovely woman on this podcast? How do you explain to people who are offline what you have experienced? Because it is so very online, and it is so niche inside if there is even an LGBTQIA. My mom asked me the other day, what's the I and the A?
Great question.
I was like, that's a good
no
question.
one knows. Changes daily.
It's intersex and asexual, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I told her. She was like,
so a medical condition. Actually, I would argue 2 medical conditions tacked onto the end.
Yeah, I know. It's but historically, culturally, we thought of that as a big block. You are a lesbian. You should be comfortable and protected in that block.
Yeah.
You're not.
No, I mean, I think the problem starts with this misnomer. So like the term LGBT community, that's silly. It's a disparate population. We're talking about 17 different groups with different needs, different incentives. There's no LGBT community. But how I would explain it, I think just like sort of telling people the story, which is the short version of it, is that I was canceled before we use the term in 2017 for writing this piece on detransitioners. And a lot of the backlash to that piece, which was not transphobic at all. Actually,
and
reading
that meant people that had transitioned to another sex and then decided to walk that back.
Yeah. And at the time, like, it was, the piece is not transphobic. It was, I like took every pains to.
It's a great
make
piece.
Thank you. I like looking back on it today. I'm like, that is not transphobic enough. I should have gone way harder. And I'm joking about that, but there are things. There are certainly.
You could have pushed harder in certain places.
Yeah. And I didn't push harder, not because I was scared of the backlash, although I was, and I should have been, but because I knew less than I know now. I know much more about thanks to Jesse, I know a lot more about the evidence behind youth gender medicine and how there's basically no evidence demonstrating that these treatments, puberty blockers or hormones, are ultimately beneficial for kids. I just didn't know that at the time. So there are certainly things I would change about that piece now, but the backlash was very online, like just your sort of typical multi-day pile-on with people who hadn't read the piece, calling me a bigot and a TERF and saying I was going to murder trans people. But I lived in Seattle at the time. I live outside of Seattle now, but at the time I lived in Seattle. And the backlash was also very offline. So people burned stacks of the paper and sent me video of it. I had to do this like insane struggle session with a group of, it was supposed to be like representatives from the trans community. It was all trans women. So like males snapping at me and crying and saying that I was responsible for like trans suicides and shit like that, while I sat there sort of shaking, like furious. So it was this was in 2017. It was just this really, there were flyers made and passed around. Like I would walk into a neighborhood and there'd be a flyer saying I was a bigot. There were stickers with my face on them all over Seattle, calling me a Nazi apologist. So I just had this like very strange experience of becoming like a kind of enemy number one within the queer community in the city where I lived. And it sucked. Like that's kind of the best way to explain it. It sucked. So that's what happened, and it changed my life in all sorts of ways. Some for the better, some for sure for the worse. Sort of socially for the worse. I'm not sure my reputation has ever or will ever recover from that article. I lost a fuck ton of friends, like friends that I'd had for many years, including Nancy, our mutual friend, who would later go on to destroy your business.
Wait, you lost? Oh, that's right. The mutual friend that we had that went on to destroy business. So I want to mention that your detransitioner article, which I've mentioned many times, is one of the most considered and tender pieces that I've ever read. It's you're talking to people, as I sometimes do in my work, about just the most difficult things that they've gone through, and you did it with such sensitivity and beauty. It's masterful, and it's so necessary because it's done without all the noise. You sit quietly with these people and tell these stories. When I met you, which was in the beginning of 2019, when I was completely in the barrel, and we can talk a little about that with our mutual friend, you came, we met at a diner by the train station. You drove up on your bicycle. You looked like you weighed 90 pounds soaking wet.
Good old days.
You were soaking wet. And you told me that like you basically didn't have any friends anymore. Yeah. Like it was all gone, that you were friends with like one of your neighbors.
And but now I have a podcast. So
there we go. I know from experience, your listeners are just always so super kind and considerate of each other, because I waded into the comments for my episode and that was a bad idea. Yeah. And they're vocal, man. They are vocal.
They have strong opinions.
They have strong opinions.
I usually read the comments until I get the first one I don't like, and then I stop.
You're like, okay, that's
Hey, listeners in Listenerland, and for those of you on YouTube, maybe watching it, thanks for being here. This is the end of the free portion of this episode. If you would like the entire episode, got to head over to Substack. That's smoke'empodcast.substack.com. Become a paid subscriber. Many ways to do that. You get the full episodes and you get some other niceties and et cetera and et cetera. And if you are over here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as well. We appreciate it. Tell your friends. Thanks.